Hello everyone, I am back at long last with another Ren'Py tutorial. Sorry I missed one of these last week. I've been busy kind of getting my other series off the ground, but I'm going to try to start doing weekly Ren'Py tutorial updates again. And today we are jumping in with kind of an involved topic that I really enjoy doing. We are going to look into doing image maps. So basically, this will allow us to click on different parts of the screen in order to jump to different parts of our code. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a scene in our bar scene that we've been using, but I'm going to have it to where we can click on the bartender in order to talk to him, or click on one of the bar patrons in order to talk to him. So this way we can, again, click on different areas of our background image in order to jump to different areas of our code, jump into different dialogue sections or entirely different parts of the game. Pretty much whatever you want to do, the possibilities with this are endless. The way that we're going to accomplish this is by using something called image buttons. I think that this isn't technically an image map. Setting up an image map is a little bit different. However, I much prefer using image buttons the way that we're going to do here. It's a lot faster to do, a lot easier to do, and a lot easier to grasp as well. I used to use true image maps, but in order to do that, you had to know the exact pixel point of every single image button on the screen. And even then, you could only do it with perfect squares. So the way that we're going to do it, we're going to be able to do it with irregular shapes. So I'll kind of show you what that means as we go along. If you're a little confused with my explanation, don't worry about it. Everything will become clear. So I've got Photoshop open. So you all know that I'm a huge fan of using open source software. However, Photoshop is the only image manipulation software that I'm even a little bit knowledgeable with. If there's enough interest in this kind of thing, then I may look into learning GIMP and doing some GIMP tutorials. But for now, this isn't really an image manipulation tutorial. I'm just using Photoshop as a means to an end. So I'm just going to show you how to accomplish this in Photoshop. Alright, so I've got my bar open, my bar image. And so I've got my bartender there in the middle, and then a patron there just to the right. And so I'm going to make it where you can either click on the bartender or click on the patron in order to talk to them. Alright, so the first thing that I need to do is I need to create a couple of extra images. So if you've never used Photoshop before, they use a concept called layers, where basically you can layer images on top of one another in order to kind of do different manipulations independently. That allows you to focus on just a specific part of the image, not affect the image as a whole. So what we're going to do is we need to create two images for each of our image buttons. We need to create one image that is going to be that image when it's just sitting by itself, we're not interacting with it. Then we need to create another image for what it's going to look like when we hover over it. So basically what this is going to do is when we're just sitting looking at the image, it's going to look just like this. But when we hover our mouse cursor over one of these images, it's going to shine. It's going to like have a white light over it, which is going to let our player know that that is an object that they can interact with. That should be really, really obvious. So the first thing that we need to do is create our images. So we already have our background image. We don't need to do anything with it. But we got to create our other images. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom way in by using Control and the plus key. So we need to get some really fine control. Not quite that fine. That should be good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically cut out this figure and put it on its own layer. And I'm going to use that with the polygonal lasso tool. So this might have just the regular lasso tool, the freehand lasso tool selected by default. If you have a really steady hand, or if you have a drawing tablet, I have one but I very rarely use it, you might want to use that where you can actually draw around the image in order to select it. However, I'm going to go ahead and use the polygonal lasso tool. So if you right click, it'll give you either the lasso tool, which is the freehand version, or the polygonal lasso tool, and right now I've got that one selected. I'm going to go ahead and click on it anyway. So every time I left click, it's going to create a point connecting. It's kind of like connecting the dots. It's going to create a line from the last point to the current point. And I'm going to do that all the way around this image. So you can start anywhere you want, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to get it kind of sort of pretty close. And like I said, if it's not perfect, you won't be able to tell. We're zoomed in really close right now, so we're going to be able to see the pixels don't exactly line up. We're going to be able to see kind of the imperfections. Right now we're zoomed in close enough we can actually see all of the individual pixels. But again, as we zoom out, all of those imperfections are going to disappear, and it's going to look, for all intents and purposes, it's going to look pretty well perfect. Alright, a little more than halfway there. And again, just every time I click, it's creating another point, and I'm just doing that just to create an outline around this character. And then the last point is going to be where our first point is, and you can see that kind of circle icon pop up. That lets us know that we're about to close the loop, and that creates our selection. And, oh, I just realized I messed up and I accidentally missed part of his body there. I went around his arm. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'll get this part out so you don't have to watch me do that all over again. Take me just a moment. There we go. So once we have our bartender selected, we're going to right click and select layer via copy. So that is basically going to copy that bartender to a new layer. And again, it's going to copy it so it still exists in our background image. If I hide that layer, then nothing happens. It actually hides that layer, but it's a copy, so you can't really tell. If I hide our background layer, then we can view that one independently. And I can turn it on and off as well. So now you can see, again, that those are on two separate layers. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with our other bar patron. There we go. So now I've got that guy selected. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with him. I'm going to right click. By the way, sometimes when you right click this to create a new layer, the layer via copy and layer via cut might be grayed out. I might not let you do those. So you might have to just say new layer, which will create a blank layer. Then go back, right click them again, and those two should be there. And it might not happen with you, but sometimes it does. It's a weird quirk of Photoshop. I'm not really sure why. All right, so we're going to do new layer via copy. Oops, and okay, so right now it says that layer is empty because I have layer 2 selected. Let me make sure I have layer 1 selected. Now I'm going to create layer via copy. There we go. And now we have our other bar patron there selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to create buttons out of these. They're going to be image buttons, literally a button made out of an image. So each of these images are going to be buttons that we can click on and do different things to interact with them. All right, so we're not done with these images quite yet, so we have to create, like I said, 2 images for each one. So we've got what we call our idle images. So this is when the buttons are idle, we're not interacting with them. They're going to look just like this. So now we have to create what they're going to look like when we hover our mouse over them. And this is pretty simple, and this you can kind of play around with a little bit and get an effect that you like, but I like to make just kind of like a glowing white effect. So I'm going to select layer 2, which is our bartender. And right click, and I'm going to go to blending options, and I like to do an inner glow, and if I click that you can see he highlights in white, and you can mess around with the opacity functions, noise, different things like that. I like to leave the noise really low, usually at 0, like maybe a good medium opacity, and I'm just going to leave that one there. Then I'm going to go down to outer glow. So it gives them kind of an outline, and this one as well you can play around with a little bit. I'm going to make that spread a little bit more. There we go. So it's kind of like a soft glow on the outside, just letting him know that we can interact with him. There we go. And then I can click the eye icon next to effects to turn that on and off. We're going to use that in a moment. And in order to make sure that we have some consistency in our style, I'm going to right click that again, and I'm going to say copy layer style, right click layer 3, and paste layer style. So now he looks exactly like that guy did. And the same way I did before, I can turn that on and off. So right now I'm going to leave both of these off. I've already got this bar image. I think I already have that in the folder, but let me double check real quick. I've got BG bar. Yep, it's already in there. I think this is going to have a transparent background. That's okay for now. I'm not going to go and put in another background in there. It'll be all right. We're just going to have transparent pixels. We'll deal with it. It'll be fine. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is, also in that folder, by the way, I have my other 2 images that we're going to use when we're actually talking to those characters. So those could be done a little bit better, but I'm going to leave them the way they are for right now. Again, they'll be fine for illustrative purposes. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my buttons. So here we have to name our files very, very specific things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my bartender button. So I'm going to hide layer 1 by clicking the eye, and I'm going to hide layer 3. So this is going to be our idle image. So I'm going to go to File, let's go to Export, Export As. Sometimes it takes us a moment to pull up. All right, so we've got a PNG file, that is good. 1920 by 1080 resolution, that is also good. All right, I'm going to click the export button. Then I'm going to navigate to my file. And now, again, we have to name these things very, very specifically. All right, so this first one, I'm going to call it background bar, or BG underscore bar. I'm going to do another underscore. And let's call this one bartender, another underscore, and then idle. So the important part is that, first of all, both of these images, both the hover and the idle image, have to be named the same thing. And the idle image has to have idle at the end, and the hover image is going to have hover at the end. So they both have to be BG underscore bar underscore bartender underscore, then either idle or hover. So you can name these anything you want as long as they have idle or hover at the end for their respective image, and they both have to be named the same thing, except for that last part. All right, so I'm going to call this one BG bar underscore idle. All right, and let's save that. There we go. Now I'm going to turn on the effects, and you can't really tell that the glow is there. You can trust me, it's there. You can kind of see the inner glow, but the outer glow gets lost in the transparent pixels. You can kind of see it a little bit. But we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to Export, Export As. There we go. Hit the export button. And then this one, I'm just going to click on that so it automatically pulls up that file name. It's less of a chance of error. And then we're going to call this one bartender hover. And then export that one. All right, we're going to bring everything else back up. Now we're going to get rid of our bartender, get rid of our other layer. So now we just have our bar patron. And this is without effects. So we're going to go to Export, Export As, Export. And this one is going to be BG underscore bar underscore patron idle. And then, just like with the other one, turn on effects. Oops, I accidentally did a quick export, but I think this will work though. You can use the quick export function, or feature rather. Okay, in this one we're going to go, there's my patron, and instead of idle, we're going to call that hover. There we go. And that's all the setup that we have to do. So give me just one moment, and I'm going to pull up Ren'Py, and we're going to get into our coding. There we go. All right, so now I've got Atom pulled up, and oh goodness, there's fire and rescue parked outside my house, and they're taking my neighbor off in an ambulance. Oh my goodness, I hope everything's okay. That just kind of caught my attention there for a second. Oh well, alrighty then. We will press on, I guess. I hope everything's all right over there. All right, so now I've got my entire game script cleared out. All I have is label start and then C BG underscore bar with dissolve. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get into the basics of what's called screen language. And this is what we use to customize screen and customize menus. I'm not going to go too in-depth in screen language. I'm only going to use the parts that we're going to use right now. But basically, whenever you create a screen, that's going to be like an image map like we're about to do, or a menu screen. As far as I know, you can place these screens anywhere. There's actually a screen .rpy file that's automatically created that has all of your menu screens and your dialog screens that are automatically called whenever you do menu and dialog options. So you can create your own and you can customize those. You can put them in screens if you want, or you can just put them inline in your code wherever you're going to use them. So best practice is if there's a screen that you're going to be using a whole lot, like the same image map, then you should probably put that in your screens, in your screens.rpy file. However, if there's one that you're only going to call once, you can just put it inline in your code. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is define my screen. So we're going to say screen space. So the screen is the keyword that lets us know we're about to define a screen. And we're going to call this bar nav. That stands for bar navigation. It's going to let us navigate around the bar. And that's it. And oh, one thing I forgot is this is technically a function. So we have to put parentheses after it. So you don't really have to understand what that means right now, but I do have another Python series that's ongoing. I will link to the video above that explains kind of what functions are. But for now, whenever you call a screen, just know that you have to have those parentheses. Then we're going to put a colon after it and go into a coding block. And the next thing we're going to do is add our background screen. So we're going to say add bg bar, and I think the .png, the file extension, is optional, so we're going to try this. I'm just going to say bar, and then we're going to say modal true. So this modal keyword is going to, something that we have to put in our image maps. I think this should work without it, but I always tend to put it in there. It's basically going to make sure that whenever we click on anything, it prevents you from interacting with screen displayables that are under it or below it. But for now, just make sure you have that in there. Again, if you don't have it in there, I think it'll still work, but we're just going to go ahead and put it in there just in case. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to define our image buttons. So we're going to say image button auto. So this is going to automatically create our image button for us, so we don't have to define exactly what the pixel location is. And then we're going to put in the base name of our image. So this is our image without the hover or idle under it. So let me double check that and see what our file name is. There we go. So we'll do the bartender first. So it's going to be bg bar bartender. So bg bar bartender, and then the final underscore. So this is where we have either idle or hover. And so we're going to put in %s. %s is just a placeholder, so it's automatically going to use the idle or the hover image wherever it needs to. So again, that %s is just a placeholder. That's where the idle or hover would normally go in the file name, and this is just so that the image button knows which one to use, in which case. All right, after that, we're going to do another colon. We're going to say focus mask true. And this makes it so that if there are any transparent pixels in our image map, there shouldn't be, but if there are, it's going to make it where everything inside that box is clickable. If you don't have focus mask, if there are any transparent pixels and you click on them, it won't work. So again, that just makes it so that if there are any transparent pixels, it'll still work. All right, after that, we're going to say hovered set variable. Make sure set variable is all one word, but set is capitalized and variable is capitalized. And this is going to set our tooltip, which is just going to be a thing that tells us like what we're hovering over. Honestly, I always put the tooltips in there in the hopes that I'm going to use them later, but I never really do. But again, like I said, I always use them just in case. So ideally, you'd be able to hover over that, and then it'll tell you that you're hovering over the bartender. But like I said, I typically don't use those. I may look into that. I'll have to research that a little bit. All right, and then we're going to say unhovered set variable. So if we hover over it, it should say bartender. Again, it's not going to the way we're going to do it today, but we might add that later. Then if it's unhovered, we're going to put in an empty string. Again, some of this might be a little bit confusing, but I just started a couple of different series on Python programming. So if you need a refresher on variables and string formatting, or anything like that, syntax, be sure to check out those videos. I'll link to one to the playlist above. But for now, as long as you just type things in pretty much exactly as I'm doing them, or just replace your own image names for whatever these are, everything should work fine. All right, so for that one, we're going to put an empty string, so it won't say anything whenever it's whenever you're not hovering over it. And then we're going to say action. So action is whatever you want to happen whenever you click on it. So our action is going to be jump. And we're going to jump to a label called talk to bartender, which we haven't created yet. We're going to create that in just a moment. And that's it. That's our first image button. For the second image button, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. Image button auto. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly. This is going to be bar patron %s. Focus, if I can spell, there we go. Focus mask true, hovered, set variable, screen tooltip, patron. All right, then an empty string, and then action, jump. Oops. Oh, I forgot to close my string up there. There we go. Talk to patron. All right, after that, I'm going to go down here and create my two labels that we're going to jump to. Label talk to bartender, and label talk to patron. And I'm just going to put a pass in there right now so they won't do anything. We're going to fix that in just a moment. All right, so that is how we create our image button screen. That's pretty much all we have to do. There's only one thing we have to do, and that's that we have to call the screen. So this part has to go in our code when we want this screen to be used. So everything here can go pretty much in any file. I would recommend putting that in your screens.rpy if you're going to be reusing that. But for now, we can just put it right here in line. But we have to call the screen, and we're just going to say call screen, and then put in the name of the screen, which is bar nav. And that's it. That's all we have to do. And that's going to call our screen when we use it. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and put in just some quick placeholder code for when we click on those buttons and talk to our people. All right, so on this one, we're going to say scene. We're going to do BG, trying to think what I named these, bartender with dissolve. And okay, I haven't defined the bartender or anything yet. So here, I'm just going to pause for like 2 seconds. And then jump back to the start. There we go. So all it's going to do is going to show the bartender for 2 seconds. Then it's going to jump back to the start. I'm going to do the same thing here. Scene, just to show you what happens when we click on these. All right, scene BG underscore bar patron is what I called this image. Oops. All right, and same thing. We're going to pause for 2 seconds, then jump back to the start. All right, everything should be working. Let's go ahead and run this and check it out. All right, home screen menu is working just fine. Let's go to start. So it brings up our bar, and now, oh, there it goes. So when we hover over our image buttons, they do highlight. Let's see if our click works. We're going to click on it. My resolution is wrong, but I don't care. There we go, 2 seconds, then it jumps back. Same thing with this guy, 2 seconds, and then it jumps back. So yeah, apparently I had my resolution set wrong on these, which is why it zoomed in really close. I thought I had everything at 1920 by 1080, but I could be wrong. But at any rate, that is how we do image maps. Believe it or not, this is the easy way of doing it. It is a little bit involved, but you don't have to understand everything. I like to try to explain everything as best I can. Some of this stuff I don't fully explain, I don't fully understand quite yet, like the modal true. Not 100% sure what that does. I think that just makes it where if there's a button under that image button, it makes it where you don't click on that one. Like it just makes sure that you click on the image button, I think is what that does. But again, as long as you just understand the syntax and know what to put in, that's all you really have to understand. But if you want to get more under the hood with this code and really understand the syntax and things, check out my aforementioned tutorial series that I just started. I've got one that's a very slow moving basic Python tutorial that I'm doing with my daughter E. And the other one is moving a little bit quicker, and it is specifically geared towards creating games with Python. So as of this recording, I've got a couple, I think I've got 2 videos out. I've got another 2 that are going to be on the way very shortly. And this one we're going to do more like kind of action games. Like we're going to get it first into like text-based games, guess the number and hangman and things like that. Then we're going to get into some actual visual games. So it'll be really cool, and I'm really excited about that one. But if you learned something today, or if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of my new videos. Of course, I have lots of great stuff coming up, and with that, we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.